In this video, we will be discussing Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's, Go Rush, and the future of Yu-Gi-Oh! So let's get into it. Upon filming this video, Konami just released episode 37 for the Go Rush series. I did watch all the Japanese versions prior to this. Before we do get into 7's and Go Rush, we first have to go back to the starting point of Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. All the series, how many seasons were in each series, and how many episodes was in total in that one series. Duel Monsters was the first series that came out. It had 5 seasons, 224 episodes. Then after Duel Monsters came out GX, which had 4 seasons and 180 episodes. Then after GX came out 5Ds, which had 5 seasons, 154 episodes. 5Ds came Zexal, which had 6 seasons, 146 episodes. Arc 5, 3 seasons, 148 episodes. Vrains, which had only 3 seasons and 120 episodes. And then came 7's with only 2 seasons and 92 episodes. Let's first start off with the most nostalgic series, which is Duel Monsters. I can still remember the first episode of Duel Monsters. It was when Yugi completely destroyed Kaiba with Exodia. They said obliterate, and that awesome music came on, and you were just able to keep picturing that scene over and over. It was the most nostalgic, and it's still played so many times in the YouTube videos of famous YouTubers. It was the first series that really brought people into the game. The game wasn't even that well built, but it was so nostalgic and awesome to look at the show and how creative it was at the time of 1998, 1999. The rules in that show were so raw. Between season 1 and 2, there was really no rules, and that's what made it so successful because nobody understood the game at the time. They legit had cards that had monsters in them, and once you summon them, they came out to life. They would fight each other, and one of the person who put out those monsters would lose in the end. The drama and adventure really did bring life to the anime, and it really did have kids wanting to buy cards. And Konami wasn't focused on the cards originally. It was just focused on getting the anime out and just making it good so people could buy the cards. After Duel Monsters, people didn't know what to do. They didn't know if they wanted to continue the series or not. The success from the GX was really just their archetype, which was heroes, because heroes are best kind of archetype you could have, especially in North America. Heroes just look so awesome, and I think Konami did really, really well. I don't know if it was an accident. I don't know if it was on purpose, but if you look at the cards and you look at the prices of those cards like Elemental Heroes, Destiny Heroes, Vision Heroes, any of those heroes, you can see that those prices are ridiculous how expensive they can be. Everybody wants the heroes, and everybody in North America really likes those iconic kind of superhero movies. Those Elemental Heroes are probably the only thing that made the show successful. Now comes riding duels or turbo duels in the dub. Duelists now have the option of riding motorcycles for dueling, or they could do traditional standing duels. There was definitely a lot more action, new formats, and a new speed world. Also the introduction of Synchro Monsters and Tuner Monsters. Unlike Duel Monsters and GX, which really focused on advanced summoning and fusion summoning, this series was the first to add synchro summoning. I think 5Ds was definitely better for the audience that was a little bit older, that was able to understand the concept of time traveling. This anime was going through a whole bunch of different timelines, so you definitely had to go back and actually watch the sub version to get all the timeline gaps and how the timeline got shifted from the past, present, and future. So definitely a show for older generation like myself. There was a whole bunch of different theories out there now on YouTube. Out of all the series, I think that 5Ds had the best ending out of all the series so far right now. And I'll tell you exactly why. The final episode, not the dubbed, but the subbed, where Yusei and Jack have their final duel. What happens during that duel is they have flash forwards to when all these guys are in the future and they're having to follow their careers and their dreams of what they wanted to do. And it really gives you closure because you're able to see what happens to them in the future. And it's just such a good ending. And when Yusei and all these guys have their last final riding duel, it's really dope how everybody was able to high-five Yusei and everybody goes their own path while Yusei stays in the city and waiting for them to come back or if they ever want to visit. Really, really dope ending. I think it was one of the best ones for closure. I really love what Konami did with that series. When I mentioned that synchro summoning was a new mechanic to Yu-Gi-Oh!, Konami then added XC summoning in Zexal. I think that Konami really knew what they were doing. They were trying to bring out new cards and make the game more complex than what it was before. In addition to being able to have new summoning, you're also not allowed to draw on your first turn. So if you had 5 cards in your hand, that's what you're going to keep. You're not going to be able to draw 6 because if you had 6, then probably a little bit more broken with the new summoning method. I think Zexal is probably the second best series out of all the series out right now. And I'll explain exactly why. Just like Duel Monsters, Zexal followed the same format. What I mean by this is they had 2 protagonists they had Yuma and Astral, Yugi and Atem. Both protagonists had to learn something from their counterparts. Yuma and Yugi both had to learn skills and confidence, while Atem and Astral both had to learn compassion, fear, risk, and loss. That is what made them develop as characters. What made this series successful was very simple. Zexal 2, which is the continuation of Zexal. And in Zexal 1, they were talking about Baryon World and Astral World were at war, but they never really showed those two worlds until Zexal 2. Astral and Yuma both had to travel to different dimensions and actually show each of the worlds, their societies, and what is right and wrong with them. I actually do think the series could have been developed more, simply because you had 3 worlds, you had different kinds of characters, and you could have added more characters from Astral World and Baryon World. You only get 7 characters from Baryon World, but we only get about 3 characters from Astral World. Definitely could have been added more characters, more development could have been made. The series could have been actually longer. So at the end of the series, you could see that everybody came together and they were saying that there was a new threat coming. It could have been shown that a new world was going to be coming out. They wanted to destroy both planets. Now Astral World and Baryon World both had to fight together to destroy that new threat. They really messed up with Zexal, and they could have continued that series a lot more longer. Now we come to Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, the collapse of the game. It's ridiculous how Konami really screwed up the whole game with one series. It's just, I can't believe it. So obviously with Arc 5, you have the brand new Pendulum monsters where you're able to summon 5 monsters at the same time onto the field, which was never heard of anywhere. I don't know what Konami was thinking when it came to Pendulum monsters. I think Konami was really trying to get a lot of new revenue. I don't think anybody at first, when Arc 5 came out, wanted to buy cards with pendulums because they really did not know the mechanics of it. With synchro summoning, all you have to do is add monster levels, and in XC summoning, you just have to have the same level. But with pendulum, it's like you have a pendulum scale, and then all your monster levels have to be in that scale. So if it's a 4 and a 2, you have to make sure that you have level 3s and you're able to summon all together. Makes it very complicated for the game, and I don't think that's why people wanted to buy the cards. I think Konami actually lost revenue. Let's just talk about the anime, not the cards. When Yugioh first did his Pendulum Summon and that sub version of OST came on, he's like dun 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 dun, and then he actually wins the whole duel. It was one of the best feelings there was. It was a good show, but you just didn't understand the actual mechanics of it because nothing was ever explained. All they said was 1 and 8, and that's it. They didn't say how it works. But the main reason the anime was very successful was simply because they brought back the characters from GX, 5Ds, and Zexal. So you were able to see Asuka, you were able to see Kite, you were able to see Crow, Jack. All the main characters from that show were all back and really brought back nostalgia to when we first watched that show. It was very surprising that they did bring back those characters because Konami was not the type of company to bring back characters into shows, which I think was very surprising. And just like Zexal, I think that Arc 5 had the most potential to be continued because you had 4 different dimensions, 4 different kinds of summonings, and then Konami just said, nope, we're not going to continue it. Arc 5 had almost the same amount of episodes. It's too short than Zexal. So Zexal had 148 episodes, Arc 5 had 146. And I think that Arc 5 could have actually continued so much more. Arc 5 already had 4 worlds developed. They had all 4 dimensions developed thanks to the previous series that was shown before. Arc 5 just wanted to focus on the Pendulum dimension instead of focusing on the other ones like Xyz and Fusion dimension, especially since a lot of people like the Fusion dimension with the heroes. And I actually would have liked to see more archetypes in that series. Wish we could have saw Zane, we could have saw Chaz, we could have saw some of the other characters that were in GX. Konami just said, nope, we're just going to put in the Synchro. We're going to stay in the Synchro dimension. And then after that, we're just going to leave it over there. Very disappointing. I wish they could have made it much more better. Especially the ending. The ending was terrible. Why would you want to put the ending as you having to duel Reggie and being able to make the kid smile? Like, that makes no sense. And it actually makes it look very sad compared to what I seen with 5Ds and Zexal. I think that Konami really did throw away their potential and being able to character develop all the other characters, especially with the 4 personalities of Yugioh where they were already in him. I wish they could have shown him helping out in the duels later on in the series, just like how in 5Ds where they had the whole city rebuilt after the Earthbound Immortal season. With this series, I would have really liked to see the 4 dimensions getting rebuilt, having his 4 personalities help him out with future duels, and then having to restore all of those people back to what they were originally. I think Konami just didn't want to do it, and they just wanted to move on to Vrains and try to sell their cards, especially since pendulums were already broken. However, you could have done something to counteract the pendulum summoning. Now, the next series is obviously Vrains, the most hated series out of all the series so far by the Yu-Gi-Oh community. This series only has 120 episodes and has the most changes to the game. They added links, they added speed duels, and they added the Vrains world, which we don't even know what it is. It's a digital world. And all of that was trying to be done in one episode. So obviously you tell that nobody understands the game until further down when you watch the whole season. Konami knows that they really messed up with pendulums. So they're trying to counteract pendulums by adding link monsters, which then in return made it more broken. So it doesn't matter what they did. They already messed up the game. Even the first 10 episodes of Vrains, you could see how lazy Konami was being, because they were trying to have duelists on a surfboard surfing down the web, and then when they had to link summon, they had to go through a portal, and once they go through that portal, they were able to link summon monsters. Later, Konami said, okay, let's not do that. It's taking way too much airtime. Let's just put a big giant square at the floor, have monsters come down and actually mark up all the arrows with red, whatever it is, to link summon. So if you're in a tournament or you're very competitive with dual monsters, you have to make sure that you're able to win, and to win you need to have link monsters, and link monsters are probably one of the most broken kind of summoning you could have, because you could just completely break your whole board, especially with access code and talker and all these crazy kind of monsters out there. Definitely Konami made a lot more off their cards than the actual anime. However, I do think the anime was terrible. I think the anime was actually had so much unnecessary actions with their surfboards and all this, like I mentioned. I think that Konami could have done a better job of fixing this, but in season 2 they definitely fixed it a lot more better. They didn't have as many speed duels on the web as they did, but I still think that it could have been improved. That's pretty much the backstory of all the series that came out previously. So we finally got to 7s, and I'll give it to Konami. The first 10 seconds of the first episode got me hooked. Like, you see literally a robot running towards a card and then grabbing the card, and then Yugioh wakes up and then he has to go to school. That really is similar to Naruto, and I'll tell you exactly why. In Naruto, the first 10 seconds you have a giant fox destroying a village. How could you start the show any better? You have so much high action at the very beginning, hooks you, then you want to continue watching, and then you have the main character showing up and continuing their storyline and creating character development further down. It's probably one of the best openings you have with high action, and it's the best hook for any audience. Other than actually the beginning of the show, there's one more thing that happened. A new format was created, Rush Duels. Nobody knows what it is. It was very similar to Speed Duels. However, this is a much more simpler version of it, and I think this version is a lot better than Speed Duels. It's very easy to understand. You're able to summon as many monsters as you can. You draw 5 at the very beginning of your turn, no matter how many cards you have, as long as you end up with 5, and you have to draw either way. Especially with the new series, there is no XC summoning, there's no synchro summoning, there's no pendulum, there's no link summonings, and that's what Konami has to keep. Do not add new summonings. Now with the first episode, after watching the 10 seconds of me being hooked on it, I'll finish the whole episode. But in 15 minutes, we see Blue Eyes White Dragon, the original first card to be played in Duel Monsters. Probably the best way to keep an audience and keep the nostalgia back in the show. I gotta give it to Konami, they knew what they were doing. They knew that they wanted to keep the audience with the show, so they wanted to put nostalgic cards from the original back into the show. The other thing about Konami is that they kept the tutorial 20 to 30 seconds long. If you were to explain the whole game from Duel Monsters to Link Summoning, it would take like 3 days to explain the whole thing. Other than the rules, Konami actually incorporated other series. What I mean by this is they added Dark Magician, they had Blue Eyes, they had Red Eyes, they had Dark Magician Girl, Summon Skull, they had Utopia as an effect monster. So many different nostalgic monsters from different series added to the actual game. And I was surprised when I saw 7's only had 92 episodes, making it the shortest series out of all the series so far. When I finished episode number 92 and I scrolled down to check for the next episode, I saw nothing, and I was surprised that it was the last episode. That's how much potential this show had. The graphics were amazing. The gameplay was amazing, especially when you're able to see the hand that the duelists had and showing the cards that they were drawing before they even started their turn, which helped us who actually followed the game in the actual anime to make sure that all the ruling was proper. It really made the game more sense, and you're able to actually see what the duelists are doing with their hand and what kind of move they could have done or not done. I understand that it is very difficult to animate the show because you need to make sure that the gameplay is within 20 minutes of the actual show. It can't be 25 minutes, it can't be 30 minutes because then you're going over the time. It can't be shorter because then the duel would be too short. You have to make sure that the duel makes sense to the storyline that is created. And then after all that, you have to make sure that you have the voice actors create the voices for all the characters, and everything has to be synced up within a week. However, in my personal opinion, I do prefer quality over quantity. What I mean by this is that I like having good quality videos or animes come out within 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, whatever it may be, and being able to watch good quality versus something very, very crappily made and then not being able to enjoy it at all because it's so bad quality that you just want to turn it off. If Konami does want to continue the series, they have to focus on the quality. I don't want a series that is only for 100 episodes and it gets shut down or canceled. I want to see this flower bloom and make it as awesome as possible than having to later watch the show and be very disappointed in the end of how it actually came out. Konami already created all the characters with their middle school clothing and Yugioh coming back to Earth after 2 years in space. A story could have been told between the 2 years of Yugioh leaving and coming back, and the flashbacks being added to the episodes in the future, with flashbacks showing exactly what Yugioh was doing in between that time period of when he was gone and he came back. I think that maximum summoning could have been added to the show since we barely seen any. We only saw about 4 to 5 maximum summons. We want to see Luke, Roman, and Gakto have their own maximum summons. Those maximum summons are so amazing. If you look at the music to the actual summoning, it just works perfectly. The music is completely synced up and it's amazing how dramatic they can make the summoning be. I will end 7s on a good note, which is the clothing design. I really love seeing different characters with different clothing throughout the show. For example, One Piece. One Piece, if you look at the beginning, different kinds of clothing for each of the characters and gets changed up. Even the color alone makes a huge difference to the show. If you look at Duel Monsters, you can see that Taya, Yugi, Tristan, Joey, they all have different character clothing at the beginning, but then at the end of season 5, you can see a completely different change to the characters. I also think that the music to the scenes of each character was amazing. For example, the maximum summoning, I think the music was very, very spot on. So if you have a huge giant maximum summoning, you use big giant music to dramatically make the audience feel like something big is going to come out, and being able to show that emotion to the audience and making them surprised at the very end. I just wish Konami could have done more with the series and created more. I think they should have had someone else come onto the team and actually help push the story out and being able to push the series further more into the future, create more seasons, create more episodes, all this crazy stuff to make it a better, successful story. Now we're going into the present, which is Go Rush, the new series that just came out. Go Rush is the continuation of 7s, with new characters with similar or identical last names to the characters in 7s. We can even see some similarities in appearances. However, the characters from the previous series are nowhere to be shown, except Yugioh, who is shown slightly, maybe. Because we don't know if it's actually Yugioh or if it is or isn't. They really are teasing us with the Yugioh not shown. But that leads me to my next point. Konami, you cannot be afraid to bring old characters back to the new anime. One Piece is the biggest fan favorite because they keep bringing back past episodes, past characters. Boruto is the continuation of Naruto, and people are still watching because it still has the main characters, Naruto, Sasuke, all these guys in the show. Beyblade Burst is the continuation of Volt and having him evolve from series to series, and he's still able to duel the main protagonist, and he's still a main protagonist himself. So it's so interesting to see the most fan favorites, and people actually do buy cards from them. Konami, this is what you need to do. You need to bring back the characters from 7s back to the series and having them play a huge role in the series. We have a 2-year gap between Yugioh leaving for space and coming back, then another time gap between Yugioh's kids. All this crazy timeline gaps that are happening between kids and grandkids and all this craziness. I don't even know what's happening with the timeline. This could be easily fixed, but Konami, you need to act really, really quickly, because we as the audience are getting confused by who's who and who's the descendant of what. So make sure you're able to get the timeline back and be able to continue it. I also see Yugioh's descendants being very similar to Yugioh. So Yuamu is the brains or intelligence of Yugioh, and Yuhi is the emotional or passion of Yugioh. They are both split characters of Yugioh, which are now passed on to the next generation. And it's going to be interesting to see where they end up and developing as characters. Their line art design of the characters are amazing and seamless. You can barely see the lining. However, with the background, I did notice a huge difference between Sevens and Go Rush. When I first opened up that episode and started watching, I was able to see that the background felt like it was drawn by a 6th grader. I don't know what it was, but it threw me off so much. Like every time when I would watch the show, I would not watch the characters, but the actual background, which really disappointed me, because compared to Sevens, I was more focused on the characters because the background looks so much better in Sevens than it did in Go Rush. And like I mentioned before, I do like seeing characters in different uniforms. I would like to see the protagonists in the series put on different clothing, have different uniforms, just like in One Piece, where you have Nami who always changes her clothing when island to island, or Luffy when he changes his vest color from island to island. If you're able to design new clothing season to season, it will also show character development with their style and them growing as adults. I think the music needs more dramatic, cosmic sound. The best way for me to explain it is to look at Zexal. If you look at Barian World and when they're dueling and they have like the dun, 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 like, I think the music should be much more dramatic. I do have high hopes for Go Rush, and since it just started, I don't want Konami messing the series up, because I do see a whole bunch of potential for this series, and I hope that Konami, please don't mess the series up. Make sure it lasts as long as possible. You're literally in space. You can't mess this up. You literally could have infinite amount of adventures in the show. 1, don't mess up on the format and use summonings. Don't add synchros, don't add XCs, don't add pendulums, don't add links, don't add any of the cards or summonings that were in the previous show. This is a new reset for the show, and you have to be able to keep the game as simple as possible. Keep it to summoning and fusion and maximum. That's it. 3 summonings. That's all you need. That's going to keep the game simple, and it's going to bring a lot more people into the game. The only thing you want to evolve is the traditional cards and make different designs. For example, if you have Blue Eyes, maybe you want to create a different design for Blue Eyes and call it a different name. That's fine. But don't try and add new summonings or any kind of craziness to the game. Just keep it as simple as possible. Don't worry about the sales. The sales will come if the anime is good. I want you guys to focus on the anime, bring people into the game, and then be able to sell. Let's take a look at Pokemon, Naruto, and Dragon Ball Z. None of them are focused on cards. What they're actually focused on is the anime, and then people who want to collect cards come in and actually buy them. So what does that tell you? That people like the anime. Once they like the anime, they come in, buy the cards, and then that's it. That's all it is. The anime comes first, the cards come second. Next is Konami. You have to be able to use old soundtracks from previous series. If you're going to be using previous used monsters, Blue Eyes, Black Magician, Dark Magician Girl, it would be awesome to hear the soundtracks from Duel Monsters being used on those monsters when they're summoned. Just like when you use Seven's Road Magician's theme, when he got summoned in episode 20 by the Goha Princess or whatever her name is. I think that each scene requires a certain amount of soundtrack. I think if you guys do remix the soundtracks, I think you'll be able to use them again in future episodes. Next is the long tutorials. Man, stop with the long tutorials. You know you've spent 10 episodes trying to explain dueling in Go Rush. I got so bored of watching the episodes that I was really close to turning it off. Nobody wants to hear the tutorials. We'll figure it out once we get to the actual game. If we actually want to watch the game and play the game, we'll actually go online and look online how to play the game. We don't need a tutorial created by the company to explain the game. Nobody wants that. What we want to see is the actual show. We want to see the action. We want to see the cards in the show. We don't want to see how it's played. If we want to find out how it's played, we go into instruction manual, we have the internet, we're able to go on YouTube and look it up. So tutorials, keep it under 2 episodes and sprinkle it across the show. Don't make it a 30-minute episode. That makes the show so boring and makes people want to just turn it off. Next, to stop creating random cards. We want to seek loose Dragius monsters, Romans, guitar stage monsters. Bring back the main character monsters to the same show so it becomes a staple to the show. Just like how if we see Black Magician and Blue Eyes, we already know that's part of Duel Monsters. It's already embedded in our brains for that kind of monster. So what we want to see is make sure that those monsters that were originally used in 7s, bring back and make them staples in the show. If this show is a continuation of 7s, then it has to be shown in the future of Go Rush. There's no other way you could make a substitution for those cards. I still like the fact that Konami, you're still showing the hands of the duelists before they're taking their turns and helping us follow the turn and the moves that their characters are taking. And I really do like the teasers that are shown of Yugioh. I don't know if it is actually Yugioh. I think you have to reveal Yugioh's face and be able to show him as a main character in the actual show, since it is a continuation. That will make the anime so much successful. The last fact, which is important, Yugioh just went interstellar. Like mentioned before, this means that the adventures are infinite because space is infinite with different planets and different stars. Just like One Piece, where it is an infinite story, you just add some new islands, expand the map, and once you expand the map, the story will never end. Konami needs to do the same thing with Go Rush when it's in space. It's a rare opportunity. Konami needs to take it, or they would have wasted it. Adding planets with maximum summon, fusion summons, rare cards, whatever it may be, different kinds of species on that planet, and being able to see their dueling styles and different kinds of whatever it may be. They need to take this opportunity because it was not taken in 7s. Being able to learn new duel styles from them and being able to improve their skills as duelists, very, very important. And when I mean that the story could be infinite, I literally mean it could be infinite. We as human beings don't even know anything about space, except that it may be infinite. However, Konami needs to get more creative with the show and start brainstorming new ideas for the anime part of the company. I want to see Konami push the boundaries of the show and being able to push the show as far as possible with the story. But I could keep going on with this whole video, but I just want to let you guys know what I think about this show. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please leave a like, subscribe, comment below if you actually enjoy or agree with this video. And I'll see you guys for the next one. Peace out, y'all.